Now we continue to talk about the so-called Vedana. Vedana is translated into English as feeling or sensation. Last time we say the two monks argued about the number of Vedana, number of the sensation or feeling. One recognized only two feelings, and the other believed that there are three kinds of feeling. Ananda reported this argument to the Buddha. Then the Buddha told Ananda that both of them were correct because they look at the issue of feeling from two different perspectives. As to the number of feelings, the Buddha told Ananda that he had presented them not only as two or three, but also as 5, 6, 18, 36, and 108 in different presentation. For example, what are the 5 classes of feeling? They are physical, present, and unpresent, and also mental, present, and unpresent, plus neutral feeling. In total, there are 5 feelings. What are the 6 feelings, the 6 Vedanas? Those 6 feelings arising from the context of 6 organs, 6 sense organs, and 6 sensual objects, and 6 consciousness. In total, there are 6. It is based on the sensual organs that we have the eye, we have the ear, nose, tongue, touch, and the mind. Therefore, in total, there are 6 Vedanas. And what are the 18? What are the 18 feelings? The 18 feelings come from the 3 mental feelings of pressure, unpressure, and the neutral feeling. By 6 sense faculties, 3 by 6, there are 18 feelings. And what are the 36 feelings? The 36 feelings come from the 18 feelings for the householder and the monastic members. In total, 18 plus 18. In total, there are 36 feelings. And what are the 108 feelings? This number comes from the 36 feelings by the present time, the past time, and the future time. In total, there are 108 feelings. And actually, in Mahayana Buddhism, we have numberless feelings. This means that we can look at the issue of feelings from many perspectives. The result is there are different presentations of feelings and also of other dharmas. We can have different presentation from different angles. We continue to have the next paragraph. It was on this occasion that the Buddha made this statement, a statement that has crucial implications for correctly interpreting the Buddha's teachings. In this way, Aranda, the Dharma, has been stated by me in different presentations. It is on this occasion of the Buddha's replying the question raised by Aranda, that if we want to correctly interpret the Buddha's teaching, we have to take into consideration of the Buddha's statement as follows. In this way, Aranda, the Dharma, has been stated by me in different presentations. In different occasions, the Buddha taught his disciples in different ways, according to the temperament and also the level of knowledge of his audience, so that the Buddha made the presentations in different ways. The clear message conveyed here is that what occurs with actuality, and therefore what is true, needs not be repeated in the same way as a holy hymn or a sacred mantra. We can have a clear picture from the Buddha's statement that what occurs with actuality. Actuality means the truth or the thing as itself. What occurs with, that means what is 100% can represent the actuality, needs not to be repeated. And what occurs with actuality means what is true. What we can use the language to present something needs not to be repeated in the same way as a holy hymn. A holy hymn is a song, a holy song in Christianity that the Christians chanted again and again, or a sacred mantra. Mantra in Hinduism and Buddhism is supposed to have very strong spiritual power, or we may interpret mantra as some words or some expressions to be repeated again and again. That is the meaning of mantra, a sacred mantra. That is the Buddhist term, or the term in Hinduism. People believe that the mantra has to be repeated again and again in order to heighten the spiritual power. Rather, what is true can be restated in many ways from different perspectives. The truth can be mentioned or stated again and again in different ways from different perspectives. As elsewhere here too, Buddhism avoids absolutism and dogmatism. In Buddhism, we always avoid absolutism. There is no authority. Even the Buddha didn't claim that he's the leader of the Sangha. There is no authority at all. There is no absolute expression or absolute power, and that there is no dogma at all. There is no one absolutist way of presenting the Dharma that must be dogmatically adhered to. Buddhism is an open system that people can develop new theories or doctrines based on their experience. There's no dogma at all. There's no absolute expression at all. We can express Buddha Dharma in different way, in different language. What is equally important to note here is that in this connection, the Buddha goes on to say that when the Dharma has thus been presented in many different ways, one should not tenaciously adhere to one particular presentation, then argue and quarrel with others who base themselves on other presentations. And we have to pay attention here. The Buddha goes on to say, the Buddha says further that when the Dharma has thus been presented in different ways, because the Dharma is not a dogma, so the Dharma can be represented in many different ways. We should not stubbornly cling to one particular presentation. For example, we should not stick to the particular presentation in any sutra or in any lineage. We cannot stick to the presentation in Theravada tradition or in Chinese tradition of Buddhism or in Tibetan tradition of Buddhism. We should not cling to one particular presentation or expression and then argue with others and quarrel with others, because others may have their different presentations because they learn in different tradition with different masters. Each one can present their viewpoints from different angles. We should not stick to our viewpoint rather than argue with others. This means the Mahayana Buddhism should not say that the Theravada Buddhism is the so-called Hinayana. Actually, Chinese Buddhism didn't say that the Theravadan teaching is Hinayana. No. And the Theravada Buddhists should not say that the Mahayana Buddhism is not the teachings from the Buddha, because there are different presentations in different traditions and also in different times and in different locals. We can see different presentations of Dharma. That the Dharma has been presented from many different perspectives can be seen from other Buddhist discourses as well. We mentioned before that the Dharma is just like a raft or a vehicle to carry us from this shore of suffering to the other shore of liberation or Nibbana. The Dharma is only a vehicle, only a tool, not the end, not the goal. We should not grasp at any Dharma. To give some examples, the well-known 5 mental hindrances are from another perspective presented as 10. Mental hindrance is called Nivarana. Nivarana means an obstacle or something which can prevent one from something. That is called Nivarana, hindrance, or we may say obstacle. Mental hindrances, 5 mental hindrances are the obstacles for one to obtain absorption, or so-called jhana. Jhana means absorption, the mental absorption. After one practices meditation, one can attain the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and the fourth jhana. Before that, we have to let go of the 5 mental hindrances, because those 5 mental hindrances can prevent us or obstacle us from attaining absorption or jhana. And here is said from another perspective, the 5 mental hindrances can be presented as 10. Why? We have 5 mental hindrances, and each of these 5 can be multiplied by 2. For example, the first mental hindrance is called greed or craving. We can further divide the craving or the desire into 2 classes. The first one is to crave for our inner thoughts or our inner feelings. And the other one is to crave for the external objects. And also, we can have the second mental hindrance, that is the hatred. The hatred can be divided into two classifications of hatred. The first one is to arouse the hatred toward person, and the other one is to arouse hatred toward objects or things. In this way, we can double the 5 mental hindrances into 10. The 5 mental hindrances are, the first one is desire, and the second one is hatred, and the third one is called torpor, T-O-R-P-O-R, torpor, and the sloth. And the fourth one is restlessness, and the last one is skeptical doubt. We can divide these 5 into 2. In total, we can have the 10 mental hindrances. Mental hindrances are different from physical hindrances. Those are the so-called bad emotions in our mind. And the 7 factors of enlightenment, Bojjhanga means the factors of enlightenment, are from another perspective presented as 14. It is in the same way to double each of the 7 factors of enlightenment. In one under the same collection of discourses, we find a person who has entered the stream of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sotapanna is being described in more than one way under the path leading to the unconditioned Nibbana, described in 11 different ways. In the same sutra, we find that the Supatana is a person who has entered the stream of the noble man, or the stream of the Noble Eightfold Path. This means that Sopadana has cleared away his wrong views about our body and the mind and the mental factors. We call them the 5 khandhas. Ordinary people have wrong view about the 5 aggregates or the 5 khandhas as self or of self. But a practitioner who has practiced meditation after listening to the teaching of Buddha Dharma in meditation, a practitioner analyzes his or her 5 khandhas and they cannot find that there is a self-entity or something belonging to this self-entity. We call it anatta in Pali or anatma in Sanskrit. And so that he has cleared the wrong view of the body and the mind. He has cleared the ignorance of views. He is called a Sotapanna. A Sotapanna is the first fruit of the so-called 4 fruits of practice. We can describe the Sotapanna in more than one way. For example, we can also say that a Sotapanna is a person who has fully understand the 4 noble truths. And also, we can describe a Sotapanna as a person to the most he will attain arahantship to the most after 7 rebirths in the deva or heaven, other than in human being, to the most 7 rebirths as a deva and as a human being. A Sotapanna can become an arahant. In different ways, we can define who is a Sotapanna. Under the path leading to unconditioned means liberation or emancipation or freedom from the cycle of birth and death, cessation of suffering or cessation of rebirth in 11 different ways. We have a chapter dedicated to explain the meaning of Nibbana. We will read it in the future. Even the noble truth of suffering has been formally defined in 3 different ways, adopting 3 different perspectives. For example, the Buddha say, human life is dukkha. This is the 4th expression. And the Buddha also says that the 6 senses or the 6 sensual organs are dukkha. And the 3rd way of expression, the Buddha say the 5 khandhas or the 5 aggregates are dukkha. In short, the Buddha explained dukkha in 3 ways. Human life is dukkha. 5 khandhas or 5 aggregates are khandha. And also 6 sensual organs or 6 faculties are dukkha. We can define dukkha in these 3 ways. One purpose of our referring to some instances of the Dharma being presented in many different ways is this. This means that while we have discussions about the presentation of Dharma in different ways, there's one purpose. By taking this and other similar cases into consideration, we should not hasten to conclude that they represent different historical stages in the development of Buddhist thought, unless, of course, there is clear evidence to the contrary. Rather, they should be understood in the light of the Buddha's statement that the Dharma has been shown in different presentation. The author says that why we have spent so much time in talking about the different presentations of the Dharma, the purpose is we have to understand that the different presentation of Dharma represent different perspectives. They are not the different historical development stages of Buddhist thought, unless, of course, there is clear evidence. Here, we have to keep in mind that the author mentioned this purpose because the author is a scholar of Theravadan tradition. And we understand the Theravada tradition remains almost the same as the Buddha times. There is no much development of the Theravadan teaching. However, in Mahayana Buddhism, we can clearly see different stages of development of Buddhist thought, from the so-called Madhyamaka to the Vijñāti Matrata, and finally to the Tathagata Garbha. And also, we can plus another development, that is the Vajrayana. Vajrayana is one of the Mahayana Buddhist school. Vajrayana is the development of the Mahayana. And we can say Vajrayana is the last stage of Buddhist thought in India. However, when Buddhism spread to China, different schools developed from the India Buddhism and the Chinese traditional Confucianism and the Taoism. For example, we have the Teta school, we have the three commentary school, we have Vinaya school, Pure school, Chan school, and also Vijnapti Machata school, esoteric school, or Vajrayana school in Chinese Buddhism. Evidently, in Mahayana, there are many stages of development. If the Dharma can be presented from many different perspectives, this is because the Dharma is not actuality as such, but a description of the nature of actuality. And why we can present the Dharma in different ways from different perspectives. This is because Dharma is not the actuality. The actuality is only one. Therefore, if Dharma is the actuality, Dharma can be presented in one way. However, Dharma is not the actuality. It means that Dharma is not the truth. Dharma is not the thing as itself. Dharma is a language or a wording or a description of the nature of actuality. Therefore, actuality, every actuality is only one. And the Dharma is not actuality. Dharma is only the description of the nature of actuality. In that case, we can present the nature of actuality in different ways. For example, I am totally different from you, and you are totally different from another person. I of today is different from I of yesterday, of last year, and also different from the future. Therefore, in every moment, everything is changing. There is no everlasting actuality. There is no reality at all from the angle of Buddhism. There is no entity. There is no everlasting or unchanged essence of actuality. And Dharma is not actuality at all. Actuality cannot remain the same all the time, not to mention that the Dharma can be presented in only one way. The Dharma is a conceptual, theoretical model which describes the nature of activity through a series of propositions. The Dharma is a language, but the language comes from our concept, comes from our idea. When we see or when we hear some sound, when we see some article, when we hear some sound, or when we thought something, we have an idea in our mind. This is the so-called concept. And we want to express our idea by means of a language or any sound. And if we want to present our idea, we have to use our language in a theoretical model, in a theoretical way, in order to make our presentation of our concept or idea or understanding of something can be understood by other people. This is the so-called conceptual, theoretical model, which describes the nature of activity. It is a means only. The Dharma is not the activity, is not the truth. Not to mention that the activity is changing all the time. And we use a series of propositions. A series of propositions is to establish a theoretical model in order to make our presentation of the Dharma as rational and reasonable. We find this idea formally expressed in an Abhidhamma compendium when it says, it is by not going beyond concepts, panyati, that the nature of activity has been presented. One Abhidhamma compendium, that means one Abhidhamma book or writing, says, it is by not going beyond concepts or panyati in Pali that the nature of activity has been presented. This sentence means that we can understand the nature of activity through Dharma or through expressions of the activity, through language or through concept or any theoretical model, that we can understand something or the activity is presented by language, and the language is the result of our concept or idea. Panyati. Panya means wisdom, and panyati means something out of wisdom or knowledge. Here the term concept denotes both concept as name mean nama panyati and the concept as meaning artha panyati. Here in the sentence that we can understand the nature of activity by means of concept or panyati. The term panyati has two classifications. One is panyati as nama or concept as namely nama. Nama is to name something. This is the language or our word or our writing. And the second panyati or concept is concept as meaning or concept as panyati, artha panyati, the artha panyati. Artha panyati means the language describes something. For example, we may say a human being. We may explain a human being as an animal who has wisdom, who has one head, two hands, and 2 feet. This panyati is to describe the artha or the meaning of a human being. And when we say a human being is a nama panyati. There's only a name. There's no meaning at all. We have to further explain what is a human being. When we say a human being, it is nama panyati. And when we express what is a human being, this is artha panyati. Artha means meaning, and nama means name. Nama is similar to the English term of name. Therefore, what this means is that the nature of activity has been presented within a conceptual, theoretical framework through the symbolic meaning of language, a medium. Language is a kind of symbolic medium to express the substance or nature of activity or the nature of something in a conceptual, theoretical framework. It means it is well organized to express our concept and our development of the expression into a theory. very concise and very clear. This is the so-called Dharma. Dharma is a symbolic medium of language to express our concept in a well-organized theory in order to let other people understand our meaning. As a matter of fact, there can be more than one conceptual or theoretical model encapsulating the nature of actuality. As a matter of fact, there is not only one conceptual or theoretical model to summarize or to grasp the nature of actuality. Therefore, there can be more than one expression of Dharma. There can be different ways of presentation. The validity of each will be determined by its ability to take us to the goal. That is, from bondage to freedom, from ignorance to wisdom, from our present predicament to final emancipation. The value or the validity or the effectiveness of Dharma, of any Dharma or any language expression of the nature of actuality is determined by whether this Dharma can take us to our final goal. The goal of a Buddha Dharma is the attainment of emancipation or liberation or freedom from bondage, and to develop wisdom from ignorance, and to have the final emancipation or the so-called Nibbana without reminders from our present obstacles or present suffering of human life, the cycle of birth and death, which comes from our ignorance. And because of the ignorance, we are bondage in samsara. And there are many predicaments or obstacles to prevent us from freedom. The Dharma is the tool or the means to take us to the goal of Nibbana. If any Dharma cannot take us to Nibbana, then it has no value, and it can be called invalid. We apply the Dharma in our practice in order to attain Nibbana. If the Dharma can be presented as different conceptual models, it can also be communicated through a variety of languages. Of course, we have different concepts to present actuality. Therefore, we can have different Dharma. And therefore, we can use different languages to express the Dharma. Buddhism does not have a holy language as in Brahmanism or in Christianity. In Buddhism, we don't have a holy language. Even the Sanskrit, even the Pali is not considered as holy. We can use the Chinese or the Tibetan or English or any other language to translate, to present the Dharma, because the Dharma is not the end, not the goal, but only a vehicle to carry us to Nibbana. When it was reported to the Buddha that his Dharma should be rendered into the elitist language of Sanskrit, the Buddha did not endorse it, but allowed the Dharma to be understood by each through his or her own language. Sanskrit is the sacred language used and spoken by the class or the caste of Brahmin only, because in Brahminism, Sanskrit is considered to be the language of the god, the Brahman god. So Sanskrit is a holy language, and Sanskrit is used in Brahmanism, and Sanskrit is studied by only a small number of the caste of Brahmins. When somebody suggested to the Buddha, they told Buddha that your discovery of the truth is invaluable. Therefore, when you expound the truth of human life, you have to use the invaluable language of Sanskrit. But the Buddha declined this kind of proposal. He allowed different people to use different language to understand the Dharma, because the Dharma is not holy, because the Dharma is not something to be grasped at. Dharma is only a means, only a vehicle to attain the goal. The Dharma, as well as the language through which it is presented, are as such means to an end and not the end in itself. It is very clear. Dharma is presented by the Buddha to let his followers to practice according to the Dharma, and finally attain Nibbana. The Buddha didn't allow his disciples to cling to Dharma as holy. Another critical guideline mentioned in the Buddhist discourses for correctly understanding the teachings contained in them is the distinction drawn between two kinds of discourses. A discourse whose meaning is already drawn out, nitatta, and a discourse whose meaning has to be drawn out, nayata. Okay, there is another very important guideline. If we want to understand correctly the Buddha's teaching is there are two different ways of expression or presentation. The first one is called nitatta. Nitatta. Atta. We have nit, N-I-T, plus atta. Atta means actuality, or the truth, or the thing as itself. And the nit means already guided or already laid, L-E-D. It means that the atta or the actuality or the truth already has been expressed. We can understand clearly from the language. There's no doubt at all. This is called nitatta. Another word is nayatta. Nay means to be shown out, or to be guided, or to be expressed. Atta means the actuality, or the truth, or the thing as itself. Therefore, nyatta means a discourse whose meaning has to be drawn out. We cannot grasp at the superficial meaning of a nyatta. Something should be guided, something should be drawn out from the nyatta discourse. However, there are also nitatta discourses because they are very clear. We can easily understand the meaning of the language. There is no meaning behind the language. We have nitatta and also nyatta. We have to keep in mind that there are two kinds of discourses. One is nitatta and the other is nyatta. The former refers to those statements to be understood as they stand, as explicit and definitive. And the latter to those statements which should be interpreted to fall in line with the explicit and the definitive. Netatta means the statements is very clear, obvious, and it can be understood as the language represent, as definitive and explicit. Explicit means clear. We can fully understand the meaning of nitatta. And nitatta refers to those statements which should be interpreted, which should be interpreted again, which should be developed further in order to fall in line with, that means to be the same as the explicit and the definitive. And here usually we can say that all the suttas or sutras are nitatta. Another so-called Vinaya or Sastra. In English, Vinaya means discipline, and Sastra means commentary. Both Vinaya and the Sastras are nitatta because they are clear and definitive. But sutta or sutra is usually niyatta because Buddha used daily language to preach Dharma. Therefore, it is a kind of nitatta, whose meaning is already drawn out, is an expression for philosophical language. The use of impersonal technical terms to bring out the true nature of activity. This sentence interprets the nitatta, nitatta is an expression for philosophical language. It is not the daily spoken language, but it is philosophical and also theoretical and very concise and very precise. Therefore, it is definitive and clear. And nitatta use impersonal technical terms. Impersonal technical terms is special terms. Impersonal, for example, in Vinaya, it says that a monk should follow certain discipline or moral rules. And in Sastra, it is mentioned that a certain term means something very precise and very concise. It is philosophical and theoretical. Nitatta will not bring any confusion at all. However, whose meaning is to be drawn out is an expression for the use of conventional and transactional terms in ordinary parlance in presenting the Buddhist teaching. Now we have Niyatatta. Niyatatta, for example, in suttas or sutras, or the so-called scriptures, or the teachings by the Buddha. The sutta use conventional and transactional terms in ordinary parlance. It means the daily language. The daily language is conventional. Conventional means that the language comes from ancient time, from generation to generation. And the daily language is transactional terms. Transactional term means the communication among people. Therefore, the Niyatatta is expressed in ordinary language or daily language. In Sutta, it is also always means in this way. Thus, as I have heard, one time the Buddha lived somewhere accompanied by which members of Sangha and so on. This kind of expression is daily language. The daily language has come from one's fathers and is used for communication, for transaction. This distinction between the two kinds of statement is so crucial that to overlook it is to misrepresent the teachings of the Buddha. We have to understand that in Buddhist literature, there are two kinds of language. One is called Dharma language, that is Niyatatta. The other one is daily language, that is Niyatatta. We have to understand clearly their difference if we want to fully understand the Buddha's teaching. Hence, the Buddha says, whoever declares a discourse with a meaning already drawn out as a discourse with a meaning to be drawn out, and conversely, whoever declares a discourse with a meaning to be drawn out as a discourse with a meaning already drawn out, such a person makes a false statement with regard to the blessed one. The Buddha says, any person who declares a discourse with Niyatatta, but actually this discourse is Niyatatta, then this person misunderstands the Buddha's teaching. And conversely, in the opposite, any person who declares niyatha with nitattha also misunderstands the Buddha's teaching, because such kind of person don't know the difference between nitattha and netattha. In order to understand the significance of the above quotation, it is necessary to note here that the Buddhist philosophy is a dynamic process philosophy. Why we have to understand a nitattha as nitattha and netattha as netattha. Why? Because we want to clearly understand the Buddha's teachings, and then we can practice according to the Buddha's teaching in order to attain Nibbana. And here, there's one thing also very important we have to keep in mind, that the Buddhist philosophy is a dynamic process philosophy. It means the Buddha's teaching always teach us nothing is static, nothing remains the same, even in a break of second. Everything is changing all the time. Everything is in process of changing. This is called dynamic process. Dynamic process means ever changing, always changing. The Buddha told us there is no entity, there is no unchanged agent or unchanged mind or unchanged external objects. Everything is changing. Everything is in a dynamic process. This point is also very important if we want to understand clearly the Buddha's teaching. When others took for granted the reality of the subject as a self-entity, the Buddha challenged its reality and reduced both subject and object, perceiver and perceive to dynamic process. Other religions or other philosophers or other doctrines believe the real existence of subject and object. They consider the mind and the matter, the subject and the object, or the perceiver and the things perceived as having a self-entity, a real existence of the subject and the object. However, the Buddha challenged this kind of reality, and the Buddha reduced everything as dynamic process. There is no unchanged subject and object no static perceiver and perceived. The Buddhist teachings on impermanence, non-self, and the dependent arising mean that in the final analysis, there are no agents, entities, and substances. All the Buddhist teachings, not only in Theravada teaching, but also in Mahayana teachings, or in different schools of Chinese Buddhism or dependent Buddhism, or even modern teachings. We always say that there is no I, there is no self, and that there is nothing belonging to I or to self. No concrete or existent agents, entities, and substances. There are only mental and material phenomena that arise in dependence on other mental and material phenomena with no self-subsistent nominal as the ground of their being. We have two terms here, phenomena and also nomina. Phenomena is the appearance of all things, and nomina is the substance or the nature or the foundation or the source of the phenomena. Phenomena means outside appearances, and the nomina means the crucial foundation of phenomena. In Buddhism, there are only phenomena, whether mental or material phenomena. All the phenomena are interdependently originated or arising. All the phenomena depend on other phenomena. The mental and the material phenomena depend on other mental and material phenomena. And all the phenomena or behind the phenomena, there is no agent, there is no entity, there is no overall, there is no substance. In short, there is no nomina. A nomina is self-subsistent. It means that nomina depend on nothing. Phenomena exist by themselves. Nomina didn't depend on other things, but phenomena depend on other factors. Mental and material phenomena are the result of the core function of other mental and material phenomena. They happen according to the cause and the conditions, and they go away, disappear also according to the change of causes and the conditions. There's no overall behind the phenomena. The phenomena don't come from any overall or any first cause or any single cause, or even not come from many causes and conditions, because all the causes and conditions also depend on other causes and dependence. It is only a skilled means of expression that we say, out of the cause and the conditions, there is a result. This is nyayatta. This is not nitatta, because we want to let the ordinary people to understand the meaning of the principle of cause and effect. Therefore, we use the daily balance or the ordinary language to say, because of causes and conditions, some effect arises. This is only nyayatta. This only a skillful means in order to persuade people to follow the moral rule, to behave in a good way, not to go astray in unwholesome morally. We only use this nyayatta, or the skillful means, to explain the principle of cause and effect. It is nyayatta, not the nitatta. It means that all the phenomena appear and disappear by themselves, not because of the external conditions or the external elements, because of certain causes and the conditions, that certain phenomena happen or disappear. There is no agent at all. There is no agent at all. There is no I at all. We call it atma, or atta. Atma means everlasting agent or entity. It is selflessness. There is no self at all. In all Buddhist teaching, very important to remember that everything is a dynamic process of changing. We should not stick to any dharma. Dharma is only a verbal or writing expression of the dynamic process. it should not be grasped at. The Dharma can be presented in different ways by different language or by different people in different time and in different places. This is very important to remember. All right, this is the end of tonight's talk. Further in?
Thank you, Professor Cheng, for the detailed exposition today of the first chapter, some preliminary observation of the written book on early Buddhist teachings, middle position, and theory and practice. Before we end this online Dhamma session, dear fellow class members, once again, please turn on our video cameras and let us put our palms together. Let us listen and repeat after Professor Cheng as we invite the professor to lead the class in the dedication of merits. Professor Cheng, please.
Yes. May all sentient beings be free from the causes of suffering.
May all sentient beings be free from all the causes of suffering.
May all sentient beings be free from sufferings.
May all sentient beings be free from suffering.
May the world be peaceful.
May the world be peaceful.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next time. Thank you very much.
Dear fellow class members, please continue to put our palms together. In gratitude and with great appreciation, please give one bow to the professor and Dhamma teacher. Thank you, Professor.
Okay,
and Cheng. Once again,
Professor,
thank you. See you at the next
Professor, may I
session.
ask one question?
Yes. Please.
May I ask one question?
Yes.
Yeah, because we all heard that there's a problem called conceptual proliferation. So does that means the concept has a problem, or the problem is not the concept but proliferation? And we all heard that the Zen Buddhists emphasize that the Buddhism should go beyond the word or language. But in these passages we just heard, I think the problem is not the language or a concept, but the bad or the unwholesome concept. So what is your opinion about this?
Yes, of course. The problem is not the language. Also, the problem is not our concept. The problem is not what we thought, what we think, or what we conceptualize. But the problem is our understanding of the activity. If we don't understand that there's no activity remains unchanged, then we can have even many concepts or imagination, or we may use different language. The language and the concepts are not the problem. The problem is our wisdom, whether we have the wisdom to understand the activity as in the process of changing. There is no activity at all. As the patriarch Huineng of Chinese Chan Buddhism, he says that he has no special way to stop his thinking. He has many thinkings, and that it be the wisdom arises from his different thinkings, because he didn't cling to the entity of the thinking. He just that the thinking goes as it is, because he understands the shunyata, or the emptiness nature of all entities, of all we call realities. Everything is empty in nature. Therefore, the language is not the problem, but the wisdom or the understanding, the real nature of all things, or the phenomena. It is the most important things. The phenomena, there are different phenomena which depend on one another, but behind the phenomena, there is no nominal, or there are no nominal at all. The wisdom is more important.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your introduction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye.